Cannibal Holocaust wasn't just a controversial horror movie, it was a deliberate trap, a mirror, a confrontation designed to collapse the distance between viewer and violence. Behind the grainy footage and documentary framing, production chaos erupts. Actors vanish from public view. Courts get involved. Endings are debated, buried, altered, and quietly reshaped. What audiences didn't know is that the most important message of the film isn't in the shock, it's in what was almost erased. This is the story of 20 weird facts about Cannibal Holocaust, from production disasters to ethical battles building toward the hidden final scene they didn't want you to find. Stay with it. Watch closely. And if you're ready to look past the surface, go ahead and start the video. Fact 1. The film is built like evidence, not entertainment. Cannibal Holocaust doesn't open like a movie. It assembles itself like a case file. Missing people, recovered footage, conflicting testimonies. What audiences didn't know is how intentional this structure is. Director Ruggero Deodato designs the film to feel incomplete on purpose. Not polished, but fragmented. Not cinematic, but procedural. The framing device isn't there to add realism. It's there to create distance, then destroy it. Viewers are trained to observe, not empathize, to analyze, not react, until suddenly the line collapses. The footage stops feeling discovered and starts feeling complicit. It wasn't storytelling for comfort. It was storytelling as accusation. Every cut mimics how real-world documentation sanitizes brutality. The film asks a quiet question long before it shouts, "Why are you watching this at all?" That question shapes everything that follows. Fact 2. Actors were asked to disappear after release. What audiences didn't know is that several actors were instructed to avoid public appearances after filming wrapped. Not for publicity, for believability. Deodato wanted rumors to spread that the performers were truly gone. This wasn't a gimmick, it was an experiment. The goal was to let uncertainty fester, to blur fiction and reality so thoroughly that doubt became part of the experience. The film wasn't finished in the editing room. It continued outside the theater. Call sheets ended. Silence began. No interviews, no premieres, no clarification. That absence wasn't accidental. It was designed to amplify unease and sell the illusion that the footage might be real. It wasn't marketing. It was manipulation. And it worked so well that consequences followed far beyond what the production expected. Fact 3. The courtroom becomes part of the film's legacy. The illusion worked too well. What audiences didn't know is that legal authorities questioned whether the violence on screen crossed into reality. Deodato is forced into a position no filmmaker expects, proving that actors are alive. Contracts are produced. Performers appear publicly. The illusion collapses under legal scrutiny. But something else forms in its place, a reputation. The courtroom doesn't just challenge the film, it completes it. The movie about media exploitation becomes entangled in real systems of judgment and morality. Not symbolism, not metaphor, actual consequence. It wasn't just a movie being judged, it was an idea. And that idea refuses to stay contained on screen. Fact 4. The documentary style is a weapon. Handheld cameras shake, focus slips, audio distorts. These aren't flaws, they're tools. What audiences didn't know is how carefully these mistakes are planned. Deodato understands something unsettling. Audiences trust imperfection. Clean images feel staged. Rough images feel honest. The film exploits that instinct. It wasn't realism for immersion. It was realism for credibility. Each visual flaw lowers defenses. Each technical rough edge builds trust until the content beneath it becomes unbearable. Not spectacle, but exposure. Not fantasy, but intrusion. By the time the film reaches its final moments, the style has already done the damage. The ending doesn't shock. It condemns. Fact 5. The film is about media violence, not wilderness horror. Despite its reputation, Cannibal Holocaust isn't primarily about isolation or survival. What audiences didn't know is that the true subject is media arrogance. The explorers don't document cultures. They provoke them. They stage moments. They escalate conflict for better footage. Cameras don't observe, they instigate. It wasn't a survival story. It was a critique, a warning about what happens when recording becomes more important than responsibility. The jungle isn't the danger, the lens is. This theme isn't subtle by accident. It's buried under extremity, so viewers must fight through discomfort to reach meaning. The film doesn't explain itself kindly. It waits until the end, then turns the accusation outward. Fact 6. Studio pressure almost softens the message. What audiences didn't know is how close the film comes to undermining itself. Distributors push for clearer heroes, clearer morals, a safer ending. Executives worry audiences won't understand the critique, that they'll only see chaos. They want reassurance, explanation, distance. Deodato resists. The ambiguity stays. The discomfort remains unresolved. It wasn't confusion. It was intention. The film refuses to comfort, refuses to tidy its message. That resistance is why the ending matters so deeply, because without it, the film becomes exactly what it criticizes. Fact 7. The editing is designed to exhaust you. Scenes don't breathe. Cuts come early. Moments linger too long. What audiences didn't know is how deliberate this imbalance is. The edit isn't about rhythm. It's about fatigue. The film wears viewers down until resistance drops. Judgment dulls. Not entertainment pacing, but psychological erosion. By the time the final footage plays, audiences aren't alert. They're drained. And that vulnerability makes the ending land harder. The film doesn't surprise you. It confronts you when you're too tired to look away. Fact 8. The music contradicts the images on purpose. Gentle melodies float over brutal visuals. What audiences didn't know is that this contrast is the point. The score refuses to react appropriately. It doesn't warn. It doesn't escalate. It soothes. Not horror scoring, but moral dissonance. The music asks another quiet question. How easily can beauty distract us from harm? By the end, the calmness becomes unsettling. The sound tells you everything is fine while the images argue otherwise. That tension prepares the ground for the final accusation. Fact 9. The recovered footage is structured backward. The film doesn't reveal truth, it strips it away. What audiences didn't know is that the footage is ordered to make viewers complicit before they're informed. You witness consequences before causes, reactions before context, judgment before understanding. It wasn't mystery, it was manipulation. By the time explanations arrive, opinions are already formed, and the film quietly asks whether that mirrors real-world media consumption. The ending doesn't explain, it reflects. Fact 10. The film wants you uncomfortable with yourself. This is the moment to pause, because what comes next changes how you see the entire movie. What audiences didn't know is that Cannibal Holocaust is structured to turn the viewer into the final subject. The explorers fail. The footage condemns them, but the last target isn't on screen. It's you. And if you're still watching this breakdown, go ahead and like and subscribe, because the final stretch reveals why the ending was hidden, debated, and quietly reshaped. The film isn't finished until you react. Discomfort isn't a side effect. It's the goal. Fact 11. The ending was never meant to be cathartic. Most films release tension. This one seals it in. What audiences didn't know is that early drafts flirt with resolution, then reject it. No justice, no closure, just a question left hanging. It wasn't cruelty, it was consistency. A comforting ending would absolve viewers. The final cut refuses that mercy. It leaves the audience holding the weight instead of the characters. Fact 12. Broadcasters tried to reframe the conclusion. When the film circulates internationally, edits appear, dialogue trimmed, emphasis shifted. What audiences didn't know is that some versions dull the final implication. Not censorship of images, but of meaning. The accusation softens, the mirror cracks. But even diluted, the discomfort lingers, because the structure still leads you there. The ending still points outward, even when trimmed. Fact 13. The final scene is about silence, not shock. There's no explosive moment, no final image meant to thrill. What audiences didn't know is that the power of the ending comes from restraint. The film simply stops, and in that stopping, it speaks louder than any scream. Not violence but implication, not horror but reflection. The absence forces interpretation, and interpretation forces responsibility. Fact 14. The title line changes, meaning at the end. I wonder who the real cannibals are. Early on, it sounds rhetorical. By the end, it's surgical. What audiences didn't know is that the entire film bends toward recontextualizing that sentence. The answer isn't in the jungle. It's in the consumption. Images, suffering, spectacle. The ending turns the title into a verdict. Fact 15. The film refuses to let you exit cleanly. Most films guide audiences out gently. Resolution, reflection, emotional release. Cannibal Holocaust refuses all of it. What audiences didn't know is how radical that choice was for its era. The movie ends mid-thought, mid-judgment. There is no moral wrap-up, no final reassurance, no safe distance restored between viewer and screen. It doesn't escort you out. It abandons you there inside the discomfort it created. That unresolved feeling isn't an accident. It's the point. The film doesn't want applause or understanding. It wants unease, lingering doubt, a question that refuses to settle. By denying closure, the ending ensures the film continues after the screen goes dark, not as entertainment, but as an unresolved confrontation. Fact 16. The ending was nearly removed entirely. Behind the scenes, pressure builds. What audiences didn't know is how close the final scene comes to disappearing altogether. Distributors worry about backlash, about outrage, about being misunderstood. The ending is quiet, but its implication is loud, and that makes it dangerous. Remove it, they argue, and the film becomes simpler, easier to sell, easier to categorize. But removing it would strip the film of its purpose. Without the ending, the movie collapses into spectacle, violence without critique, provocation without consequence. Ruggero Deodato resists. He understands that the final moments aren't optional, they're the thesis. The scene stays, subtle, accusatory, necessary, not because it explains the film, but because it completes it. No, fact 17. Critics missed the point for years. Initial reactions focus on surface shock. What audiences didn't know is how long it takes for serious discussion of the ending to emerge. Critics fixate on imagery, on controversy, on extremity. The final moments are overlooked, or dismissed, or misunderstood. Only years later does the conversation shift. Scholars revisit the structure, the framing, the final accusation. The ending is re-examined not as provocation, but as commentary. Time changes perspective. Distance reveals intent. What once seemed chaotic begins to look deliberate. The film doesn't change. Understanding does. Cannibal Holocaust ages into meaning, and the ending once ignored becomes the key that unlocks everything that came before it. Fact 18. The ending anticipates modern media criticism. Long before conversations about sensational footage dominate culture, Cannibal Holocaust asks a dangerous question. Who benefits from outrage? What audiences didn't know is how forward-looking that accusation truly is. The film doesn't condemn violence alone. It condemns the packaging of it, the pursuit of impact over truth, the transformation of suffering into content. The ending doesn't belong to 1980. It belongs now, to an era where images circulate endlessly and context evaporates, where attention becomes currency. By ending without resolution, the film forces viewers to sit with their role as consumers, not witnesses, but participants. The critique isn't dated, it's unfinished, and that's why the ending still unsettles decades later. Fact 19. The film ends where responsibility begins. No character is punished on screen. No justice is delivered. What audiences didn't know is that this absence is deliberate. The film doesn't resolve responsibility, it transfers it, away from characters, away from narrative, toward the viewer. The ending draws a quiet line. Everything before it belongs to the film. Everything after it belongs to you. By stepping back, the movie forces reflection, not on what happened, but on why it was watched, why it was consumed, why it was allowed to exist as spectacle. The story stops. Judgment does not. Cannibal Holocaust doesn't close its argument. It hands it over. And that handoff is the most unsettling moment of all. 20. The hidden final scene is the film watching you. The true ending isn't an image. It's a realization. What audiences didn't know is that the final scene isn't about what happens next. It's about what already happened, your participation, your attention, your choice to keep watching. The film doesn't conclude, it accuses. And that's why the ending was uncomfortable, why it was debated, why it was almost buried. Cannibal Holocaust doesn't ask forgiveness. It asks a question and leaves you alone with the answer. If this breakdown changed how you see the film, share it, subscribe, and remember, some movies don't end when the screen goes dark. They wait. Some films end with answers. Cannibal Holocaust ends with a mirror. Its final moments don't fade, they linger, asking what we choose to watch and why. The hidden ending isn't a twist. It's a confrontation. If this breakdown changed how you see the film, share it, subscribe, and remember, some movies don't want applause. They want accountability.